Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jeremy Winter, Corporate Vice President of Azure Cloud Native and Hybrid. And let me just say, I'm thrilled to be here with you again at Ignite. Today, I'm here to talk about the progress we've made to enable you to take advantage of core Azure capabilities across your different environments. We have a great session planned for you with some exciting announcements, customer showcases, and demos. So hey, let's get rolling. To set the context, very few businesses I engage with day to day enjoy the luxury of being 100% born in the cloud. The reality for most companies is that IT investments grow organically to meet various business needs over time. While every business has a different innovation path, there are common patterns for just about every customer I talk to. For instance, many are working to launch digital products that deliver customer value faster and generate revenue through new business models. Others want to find ways to treat all their data as strategic asset, wherever it is, and turn it into new products and services. I also see that your developers are looking for ways to build new systems faster and to run without location constraints. And with every operations team looking for ways to meet evolving regulatory requirements and manage the risks through better security and governance. And finally, many conversations include a discussion on how technology can help improve management of existing facilities and assets. Look, we're witnessing new technology paradigms emerge in every industry, pushing the boundaries from AI to smart cities to transforming agriculture production, amplifying patterns that run across cloud and edge simultaneously. And according to IDC, there will be nearly 55 billion connected devices worldwide by 2025, generating 80 zettabytes of data. It's just an incredible time to see technology and digital transformation goals underpinning what I view as the next industrial revolution. I'm also sure we can all imagine the demands of meeting the needs of the expanding environments. We know the pressure that these expectations put on our developers, our architects, and our IT pros, and it can be very overwhelming, especially given the complexity of the wide variety of systems in a wide variety of places that you are all dealing with every day. It's key that we look at mechanisms to simplify this down. And at Microsoft, our job is to make it simpler for businesses to bring together people, processes, data, and drive forward business value. That's why Azure's ambition is to be the world's computer, the trusted, ubiquitous cloud platform from cloud to edge, all organizations and all workloads. With Azure, we offer the most complete set of tools and services to help developers and operations go quickly and safely from idea to code, code to cloud, and cloud to the world. To support your critical database workloads, you can adapt in real time, add layers of intelligence to applications, unlock fast and predictive insights, and govern your data wherever it resides. You can run your applications, whether they are new, cloud-native solutions, or business-critical applications you've relied on for years, with confidence on Azure. And as you expand your services and applications, you can take advantage of the unmatched security, identity, and governance for state-of-the-art cybersecurity, risk mitigation, and proactive policy-based management. And we want to meet you where you are, so you're able to compose your own consistent and comprehensive computing fabric, blending your own enterprise and operational edge investments with the Azure global infrastructure so that you can use the best that Azure has to offer across all these environments. Look, let's get into our cloud to edge story a bit deeper. First, our goal with Azure is to help you use the great Azure tooling, services, and security where you need it. We want to help you invest in the future, in cloud-native technologies and practices without worrying that you're ignoring existing assets or your future investments. Azure has 60+ public cloud regions, so you can deploy your workloads globally. Yet we recognize the mix of environments that are in play today, such as traditional Linux and Windows server farms within local data centers, retail spaces, and manufacturing floors that continue to run often on our partners like Nutanix and VMware. And light edge solutions continue to grow, powering a network of smart devices and private 5G for commercial and industrial facilities. So whether you want to be fully on the cloud or on premises, deploying hybrid solutions or IoT devices on the edge, Azure is there as a partner with you to help you meet your business goals. Now, as we evolve the platform, we're enabling the same operational model from the Azure cloud to the edge. And this is where Azure Arc comes in. Azure Arc is a bridge that extends the Azure platform to help you build applications with the flexibility to run across the data centers, at the edge, and in multi-cloud environments. Azure Arc provides a consistent development, consistent operations, and consistent security model for both new and existing applications. You use the same tools, the same security and governance technologies that you use in public Azure to create and manage application resources anywhere. A subset of the Azure services for application, data, and AI are there to use on both new and existing hardware, virtualization, Kubernetes platforms, IoT devices, and integrated systems. As a developer, you can focus on building and shipping applications with an end-to-end development experience, and IT teams have the tools they need to manage the application and databases at scale. Look, we're incredibly proud to see our customers adopting Azure Arc. We have over 8,000 customers that have deployed Azure Arc in a diverse set of scenarios. We are so grateful for the support and the feedback we hear from you, and our promise to you is to continue to provide you the flexibility you need, all the while investing with you as a partner together. To highlight a few customers further, I'm just thrilled to share that Wells Fargo, one of the largest financial institutions in the world, is using Azure Arc. To serve their millions of customers, they are using Azure Kubernetes Service, also known as AKS, to enable a common orchestration layer across their Kubernetes-based applications. But Wells Fargo also has apps that can't run in the public cloud. Now they are extending AKS to run the same fully managed AKS in their data centers around the world for applications that need to stay on-prem. Using Azure Arc as a bridge between the public cloud and the on-premises environments, Wells Fargo can have the same experience managing AKS clusters in Azure, in their data center, or at the edge. And by investing in AKS, they were able to take those same skills built from the cloud offering back on-premises. Their on-premises AKS clusters are always connected to Azure through Azure Arc to deliver a seamless and consistent and at-scale managed Kubernetes experience. Siemens Healthineers is another great example of a customer with a large base of existing applications going through modernization with Azure. Siemens Healthineers enables healthcare providers to digitize their healthcare. They provide medical imaging devices like X-rays, ultrasounds, scanners, all through digital health platforms that reach over 5 million patients worldwide daily. Siemens chose Azure Arc to deploy new applications to their medical scanners and other medical equipment across the globe. Now, when the pandemic hit, Siemens created a new application to help detect COVID-19. They leveraged Azure Arc to distribute this new application to thousands of medical devices at scale and across the globe with seamless management and security for their entire estate. And our next customer is one you all know, the iconic green and yellow John Deere tractors that are so familiar in the sites of fields around the world. With a well-stocked technology portfolio that spans cloud platforms, on-premises data centers, and edge devices at factories, John Deere's modernization strategy makes the most of its assets while cultivating a path for the future. Together with Azure Arc-enabled SQL-managed instance, John Deere helps connect the dots across all these environments and puts the power of the cloud to work in the company's existing infrastructure. The result? A unified view of operations across platforms that pivots on Azure Arc, helping John Deere to optimize manufacturing operations. So as you can see, customers across different industries are enjoying real-world benefits to better serve their customers and meet various business goals. Let's look deeper at Azure Arc and how Kubernetes fits into our strategy. Cloud innovation has radically changed the way applications are designed and operated, and it's clear from the conversations I'm having with customers, including many of you, that the app of the future is cloud native. And as cloud native becomes the prevailing mindset, Kubernetes has become synonymous with cloud native methods as customers like yourself bet on containers for operational efficiency, security, and abstraction layers. With the Azure Kubernetes service, we've made it easy for you to take advantage of several Kubernetes best practices like pre-configured templates, enterprise security and policy, as well as integrations with both GitHub and Visual Studio Code. To meet you where you are, we need to ensure we're simplifying how you build cloud-native applications that are portable. And this needs to be more than just packaging and shipping code. You need the cloud services plus the container infrastructure coupled with the DevOps practices and tooling. And with Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, whether it's AKS or third-party Kubernetes solutions like Rancher or OpenShift, Azure Arc works with them all. You can build custom container-based applications on any platform with reduced complexity and flexibility of choice by leveraging Azure Arc. Now, we recognize that it can be a challenge managing the deployment of these apps and databases across environments. To help here, Azure Arc leverages GitOps and policy-driven deployments so you can get a consistent experience at scale. Now, we have a ton of solutions already available, and we're continuously iterating with the new capabilities as we go. Today, I'm announcing that we are expanding Azure Hybrid Benefit to include AKS so that you can deploy AKS on Azure Stack HCI and Windows Server at no additional cost. And for Windows Server software assurance customers, you can deploy and manage Linux and Windows applications in your data centers with a consistent managed Kubernetes service. We're also bringing new hybrid deployment options to AKS enabled by Arc to deploy AKS on Windows devices and Windows IoT. I'm also excited to announce the preview of Mariner Linux as a container host for AKS. With Mariner Linux, you have the advantage of consistency across cloud and edge with a full end-to-end optimization of Linux on AKS. And lastly, we're bringing more cost savings to you for your hybrid Kubernetes workloads. Azure Policy is now available for 1 year for Arc-enabled Kubernetes, including AKS clusters, at no additional cost. Now, to show all this in action, I'm really excited to bring Jian, lead product manager of Azure Arc, to walk us through a demo that includes many of these new announcements in Azure, including the power of GitOps across the environment.
Thanks, Jeremy. Really excited to be here. As you know, Azure Kubernetes Service offers a simple experience to develop and deploy cloud-native apps in Azure. It comes with built-in capabilities like cluster configuration, monitoring, policy, and security. AKS has been available in Azure for a few years now, and we're extending deployment options to our new hybrid environment, targeting Windows IoT, Azure Stack HCI, and Windows Server. In this demo, we will show you how a global supermarket chain is leveraging this new hybrid model for their software development in Azure and production deployment at the edge. Let's start in the Azure portal. Contoso have two types of AKS clusters. First one is deployed in Azure that is used for software development and test. The second cluster is deployed on top of Windows 11 IoT, running on a physical small footprint machine in their store. It is also Arc-enabled, so it can be managed from Azure. In this demo, we'll focus on the consistency of software deployment using GitOps. Let's review the current application deployment. On the left, we have the application is deployed on the AKS in Azure. It is discoverable by a public IP address. On the right, the same application is deployed on the cluster hosted on Windows IoT located in the store. In this production environment, the application has store cameras integration, discoverable via private IP address. Contoso requires regular software updates with new products. To do that, a new version of the application needs to be implemented, tested, and deployed to the production AKS cluster on Windows IoT. We'll take a closer look at the GitOps configuration for both AKS clusters. By using the same configuration at the same GitHub repository, Contoso can deploy the application on both clusters in a consistent approach. Let's take a look at the GitOps configuration. Starting with the AKS cluster in Azure, it is pointing to a GitHub repository where the application's Kubernetes manifest files are located. Switching to the production AKS cluster, we can see the same GitOps configuration pointing to the same GitHub repository, assuring software rollout will be consistent. Let's move over to look at the AKS nodes details. On top, we can see the AKS cluster nodes in Azure, and on the bottom, the Arc-enabled AKS single-node cluster on Windows IoT. Zooming in on the underlying image for the nodes for both clusters, it is running Mariner CBL operating system, which is open-source Linux distribution created by Microsoft. This is now available for preview as the AKS container host. To support the new toy business, we need to roll out a new version of the Contoso application. To see this in action, we'll first monitor the Contoso PO's namespace and the deployed pods on both clusters so we can witness the update in real time. To start the rollout process, let's hop over to the Visual Studio Code. First, we can see the local branch is pointing to the GitOps configuration remote branch URL. Now let's review the two Kubernetes manifest files we have. The first YAML file is describing the development version that is deployed on the Azure AKS. And we can see the camera integration and the new toys category are currently set to false. On the second YAML file, describing the production version deployed on the AKS in the store, we can see that the camera integration is set to true and the new toys category is set to false. To test the new toy category and the update application interface, we'll first enable the new category for the development AKS cluster. This will allow Contoso to validate the new categories added and the updated interface is working. So let's go ahead and commit and push the changes to the GitHub repository. We can see that the new application pod is deploying and the old one gets terminated. By refreshing our browser, we can see the application interface has changed and a new toy category was added. Great. Now the Contoso validates the new application interface is working and the new toy category was added to their AKS development environment. It's time to roll out the change to the production environment. In the second YAML file describing the production version, we can enable the new category. Since this is a production version that is deployed in the store, we'll leave the camera integration enabled. Again, let's commit and push the update to the GitHub repository. As expected, we can see the behavior of the rollout happening instantly on the production AKS cluster. By refreshing the browser, we can see the new version with camera integration now available in the store. This side-by-side view shows how Contoso were able to test and deploy the same point-of-sale application on two different AKS deployments across the cloud and the edge. To learn more about our AKS hybrid deployment, check out the ak.ms/AKS-hybrid. Back to you, Jeremy. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. It was great to see AKS deployed in production, both in Azure and within retail stores. And as always, I really appreciate your time. Now, before I introduce our guest speaker from Millennium BCP, let's take a look at a short video.
Millennium BCP was founded roughly in 1985. We always use technology in smart ways to help and assist our customers with better products and services.
Today we have operations across Portugal, Poland, Mozambique, Macau. We have over 6 million of clients, 60% are digital.
The financial industry has a lot of very strict regulations that we need to follow.
We have 300 to 400 virtual machines running. Most of them were workloads moved from the cloud, but everything that provides services to the digital app is running on containers on cloud.
The main thing for us in the usage of Azure Arc's enabled Kubernetes is that nowadays developing teams don't need to worry at all about in which infrastructure they're going to run their applications, because Azure Arc actually makes it super easy.
Our typical Arc deployment pivots around GitOps to deploy configurations and applications. Azure policy, because if there's one thing that we need to ensure is that security and compliance is in place. Also Azure Monitor, because that gives us a baseline for alerting and monitoring that we can rely upon. What used to take us months to do, now we do it in days.
Tools like Azure Kubernetes and Azure Arc will continue to play a key role in this journey. We are building the future today.
Hey, as you saw, Millennium BCP is doing some amazing things with Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. They're the largest banking provider in Portugal, and I'm excited to introduce Nuno from Millennium BCP to share his journey with us. Nuno, thank you so much for joining me here at Ignite.
Thank you for having me.
Perfect. So Nuno, tell me a bit about Millennium BCP's cloud and Kubernetes journey.
Sure. So basically, we started using Azure 5 years ago, and with focus on a more structured cloud adoption strategy, I'd say around 3 years ago, with an internal cloud center of excellence, doing greenfield approaches to quickly realize value and build new ways of working. More than just deploying technologies, I'd say the focus has always been on changing the way we do IT, partnering with some leading enterprise partners and open source initiatives to really design what we think are best-of-breed solutions. This has led us to a service model where we now support 5 regions across Europe from multiple cloud providers, and we see on-prem, for instance, as just another cloud provider with a few thousand services running primarily in containers, ranging from things like transactional middleware and business processes to mainframe offload and AI.
That's fantastic to hear, Nuno. So let's talk a little bit more about this Kubernetes for a bit. Why did Millennium BCP choose Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes, and what role has it played in building better experiences for the millions of Millennium BCP customers that you have?
We had identified a set of patterns and technologies that we wanted to onboard doing this road trip that we're having towards the clouds. Things like GitOps and OPA policies, for instance. But we wanted to find a partner to help us accelerate adoption and share the load of running these components at an enterprise level. And I think we found that partner in Microsoft with Azure Arc enabled Kubernetes. With the Azure Arc extensions for Kubernetes, we easily extended our internal processes and automations to include these components while relying on Microsoft to manage the actual component lifecycle. This allowed us to focus, I'd say, on designing how our applications should be deployed, monitored, scaled, meaning that instead of having a large group of people focus on running the business, now we primarily focus on building the business, moving from things like, for instance, a static yearly deployment calendar to continuous deployment patterns, and focusing on rapidly creating things such as new digital banking services for our customers.
That's cool. That's really cool. With the strict regulations in the banking sector, just how does Azure Arc help you achieve your security and compliance goals for your hybrid deployments?
That's a very good question, Jeremy. Because the way we see it, security and compliance starts with things like validated workload patterns and correct visibility. And Azure Arc is crucial to this. In many of our Kubernetes clusters, for instance, most users have little or no direct access to the Kubernetes API. So any change to a workload is described in a Azure DevOps repo and then implemented using GitOps on these Azure Arc-enabled clusters. By using this process, we are automatically enforcing things like additional patterns defined by specialized roles such as SREs or SecOps people that ensure that no gaps in design or configuration were left in by dev teams, for instance. We also ensure that entire cluster configuration is kept current and available outside the cluster, facilitating service continuity scenarios and service migration scenarios, for instance. And additionally, we use Azure Policy on these Arc-enabled clusters to enforce a large list of built-in and custom policies across the cluster and ensure workloads running are safe and properly configured, exposing in Azure Policy any compliance gap that may occur so that the right people may address it wherever the cluster may be running. And as I finally, we also have Azure Monitor. We use it to ensure that we have a baseline monitoring configuration in all clusters so that we can react on time to cluster health issues.
Look, it's great to hear that Azure Arc helps provide a secure experience to you and your customers and enables Millennium BCP to protect, all those digital assets. As I think about it, can you tell me more about the benefits that you're realizing across your organization?
Sure. I think with Azure Arc, we see people focusing on using their skill set to create value. And for instance, dev teams focus on delivering features to customers, and infrastructure teams focus on enabling new application patterns. As a result, we see our innovation cadence increasing even more with both internal IT products as well as customer-oriented features maturing at a much faster pace. Azure Arc has enabled a level of automation and agility, I say, throughout an application's lifecycle that now allows us to go, for instance, from whiteboard to production in days instead of weeks or months, while ensuring the right concerns are properly addressed. And on the other hand, IT teams have an unprecedented level of visibility and understanding, allowing them to be a lot more efficient in their daily work and have still time and energy to continue implementing our IT innovation roadmap.
Yeah, look, Nuno, I think that's awesome that the teams are being able to get more efficient and you're able to see them apply it elsewhere in the business. So look, I thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate your partnership. Looking forward to seeing all the great things we can continue to do together. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, Millennium BCP is not an exception here, especially when it comes to protecting and harnessing insight of their customers' data. Data is an organization's most strategic and valuable asset. We also recognize that data is often a critical component to your applications. There will be times, be it for proximity, performance, or regulatory reasons, that you need data to reside locally at the edge. And according to Gartner's Predict 2022 report, 90% of existing data management tools and platforms that fail to support multi-cloud and hybrid capabilities will be set for decommissioning through 2026. Look, we want to make sure that customers have a modular, flexible end-to-end architecture to support growing data requirements. And Azure Data Services is certainly one that you will want to use to innovate with. With Azure Arc, you can use critical data services such as SQL and PostgreSQL as cloud-native services in your own environment. All are generally available today for you to get started with. You can also use Azure Machine Learning Services, which are Arc-enabled for use in your factory floor, operating room, and retail store to train, score, and inference your machine learning models right where the data lives. And with Azure Arc-enabled SQL Managed Instance, you get a fully managed, up-to-date platform as a service. Next, let's talk about security. At Microsoft, security is at the heart of everything we do. We invest over $1 billion annually in security and employ thousands of engineers to ensure our software and services are secure, and this includes Azure. With Azure Arc, we bring the latest Azure security and governance services and Azure-centric practices to distributed environments so that you can use the state-of-the-art threat detection, response, and analytics. You can protect all your applications, whether they're running on VMs, containers, or PaaS, and easily adapt through dynamic visibility for compliance and audit. And you can also foster collaboration between teams through shared tools. Today, you have access to a comprehensive set of tools and services such as Microsoft Defender for Cloud, Azure Policy, Azure Monitor, and Microsoft Purview. I am excited to share some new announcements with Azure Arc to secure, manage, and govern your resources. Let's start with Azure Automanage, which is a service that simplifies configuration and management of servers with automated operations. We're pleased to announce that this is now generally available for all Azure VMs and Arc-enabled servers. I'm also excited to announce, as part of our expanding support of Azure services through Azure Arc, that Azure Update Management Center is now in preview. This will simplify onboarding and enhance integrations with Azure for updates and patch management for your resources anywhere. With these announcements, I want to introduce Brandon from the Automanage product crew to run us through how to get started with the new capabilities available. Brandon, the floor is all yours.
Thanks, Jeremy. Hello, everyone. As you probably know, Azure offers an amazing array of IT management solutions which are extremely powerful and popular. Individually, they're all pretty easy to set up. However, onboarding many of these different solutions and monitoring them at scale can still be challenging. I'm Brandon Poe, a product manager in the Automanage team, and I'm going to show you a new service in Azure called Automanage Machine Best Practices that was created specifically to help you reduce the operational expense of managing your VM fleet. So what exactly does it do? Well, instead of you enabling and configuring all of these services one at a time, we allow you to define a profile that we call a configuration profile that you can assign to a machine or thousands of machines, and Automanage will set them up according to this configuration. Let's take a look. Here in the Azure portal, you can find Automanage machine best practices by typing Automanage into the search bar. First, let's have a look at the configuration profiles view. These configuration profiles let you define things like which services you want to enable on your machines, like log analytics, Azure Backup, update management, to name a few, and how you want those services to be configured. When you assign one of these profiles to your machines, Automanage will handle the initial setup and configuration of these services. But the goodness doesn't stop there. We'll also continually monitor the machines and make sure that they don't drift from this desired state. And if they do, we'll automatically pull them back into conformance. We have two built-in profiles, one for production workloads and one for dev test workloads. You can see that the dev test profile doesn't enable Azure Backup or Machine Insights, but does enable Microsoft Anti-Malware and the Azure Security Baseline. You can also create your own custom profiles to define your own best practices. For instance, if you use a different anti-malware solution, you can turn the Microsoft one off here. Now, let's enable a configuration profile on some existing machines. Note that you can also do this when creating new VMs, when onboarding new Arc-enabled servers, as well as at scale using Azure Policy and ARM templates. Here, all I need to do is select the config profile that I want to use. I'll use the production profile, and then hit Next to select the machines. Here I see a list of my machines as well as what type they are and what OS they're running. You'll notice that I have both Windows and Linux machines. Automanage supports both. Now I hit the Review and Create button to review my selection, and then hit Create if I'm satisfied. Automanage is now setting up the machines we selected and making them conformant with the config profile we selected. We can see that their status is in progress, and within a few minutes they'll move to conformant, which means that they're in the desired state. And that's how easy it is to manage your entire fleet. You might have noticed that Automanage also supports Arc-enabled servers. This is great because that means you can use the goodness of Automanage machine best practices, not just on your Windows and Linux machines in Azure, but everywhere else too, like in your own data centers, or even one of those other, not quite as good, public clouds. Oh, and I forgot to mention that Automanage machine best practices is free to use. You only pay for the services that you enable, just as you would if you were doing this all manually. So if you're looking for one consolidated management solution that simplifies onboarding and configuration and remediates drift for all of your machines, virtual or physical, Windows or Linux, in Azure, on-prem, or even in another hyperscale cloud like AWS, Azure with Automanage machine best practices is it. Thanks for watching. Back to you, Jeremy.
Thanks, Brandon, for showcasing the new capabilities within Automanage. It's exciting to see that our customers can take advantage of this both for resources on Azure and beyond. Now, switching gears here, let's talk about your connectivity needs and regulatory needs. With Azure Arc, we understand connectivity and regulatory requirements play an important factor in your application designs. And in many cases, organizations can easily move their apps to the cloud, but it gets more complex with regulated industries like government, healthcare, and financial services. Navigating these requirements is critical. With a broad range of infrastructure and connectivity options, Azure Arc can help you meet your data and residency sovereignty needs with a range of infrastructure options. Simplify edge computing infrastructure for low latency applications and operate while fully or intermittently connected to Azure, even for lengthy periods of time. For customers and ISVs looking for connectivity through 5G for low latency applications, I'm excited to announce that the general availability of the Azure Public MEC with AT&T in Atlanta and Dallas locations. We will have 2 more sites in Detroit and New York coming soon. And by using the Azure Public MEC solution, developers can deploy low latency applications at the network edge powered by Azure services and the connectivity to the operator's 5G network. Today, we are announcing new updates to simplify deployments for GPUP to improve AI/ML solutions and graphic-rich VDI solutions. We are also making it easier to migrate your workloads to Azure Stack HCI by adding new capabilities that are in preview with Azure Migrate. Finally, as I wrap up and with everything we've shared today, I want to emphasize our commitment to keep delivering Azure solutions to modernize and optimize your infrastructure and investments from cloud to the edge. Be sure to check out all the great resources in the event portal and attend the Ask the Expert session to engage with our subject matter experts for all of your questions. And to get up and running quickly, you can get started with Azure Arc with Jumpstart, which is at aka.ms/WAC Azure Arc Jumpstart. Look, everyone, we've covered a lot of ground today. I want to again thank you for tuning in and see you next time. Enjoy the rest of Ignite.